Okay, AP World, here we go. Mr. O here. We're getting into Unit 4 review today. And this one has a lot to do with trade, but also the development of these huge maritime empires that spread across the globe, and really beginnings of the creation of the world we know today. All right, so we're going to start with your topic 4.1, the technological innovations from 1450 to 1750, because this is a lot of what made this all possible, was the ability to do the travel across the oceans better. You needed to make a lot of technological advancements to get there. So let's get going. All right, so first thing up is cartography, and this is the practice and study of making maps. Without maps, it's a little difficult to get around. I mean, anytime anybody goes anywhere nowadays, we GPS it or use our Google Maps or something like that, but all the basis for that is the maps that are out there. The printing press really makes maps makes them reproducible. So first of all, you're not just relying on hand-drawn and things like that anymore, and these maps become more readily available, which means it's an opportunity for more than just the person, or in the case of the time frame we're looking at, the country that controlled the maps. European exploration and trade. Why did they want to do this? Well, there was this idea of you were serving God and King, but then there was the caveat of getting rich in the process. Europe was pretty marginalized as far as the World Trade Network went. You have to remember that in 1450 they have the Europeans and really everybody else on the Eurasian and African continents have no idea that the American continents exist, and vice versa. The Americans have no idea that they exist. There are people that maybe have hypothesized this, but it's really not happening. So, and Europe is really over on the far left-hand corner of this trade network. They're at the far end of it and kind of isolated. They want more access. They want the goodies that come from Asia. The Crusades, which had happened in the previous centuries, really kind of reopened the appetite for these, and so it drives that. Other motivations, there are very serious rivalries between the different kingdoms of Europe, especially in Western Europe. The Spanish, the French, the English, the Portuguese, all are trying to become the big boy on the block, I guess. They have the desire to access the Asian markets, and they want to cut out the Ottomans and their European trading partner, the Venetians, out of Italy. Some of this is related to religious issues, but a lot of it is the Ottomans and the Venetians are taking their cut, so it's making it more expensive. And a lot of these countries are starting to think, for the prices we're paying, could we do this ourselves? They want to spread Christianity, and more on an individual level. People were either looking for a better life, and this is really kind of the exploration and eventually the colonization part, and to escape persecution that is there in boatloads, especially with the advent of the Protestant Reformation. You have Protestants persecuting Catholics and the other way around, and everybody persecutes the Jews. Okay, individual countries. We're going to start with the Portuguese because early on they are the most prominent, and you'll see there's a map there of the Portuguese Empire that they're able to develop. And as you can see, Portugal, very tiny little country up there on the Iberian Peninsula right here. Not very big player. They want to get into China, India, and what are known as the Indies, what we might call modern day Indonesia over here. And who's challenging them for them? Well, Spain on the European side, but also the Ottoman Empire. They're kind of the big player in this market, at least along with the Mughals and the Chinese. Later, towards the end of the time period, the British and the Dutch will get involved. Okay, that brings us to Columbus. So that we'll come back to the Portuguese and kind of go back and forth a little bit here. Columbus on the Spanish side is searching for a new route to India also. And his idea was that you could sail west to get east. The belief that the world was round. There really wasn't this idea that the world was flat. It was more that you would sail into waters that who knows what was there. And it leads to Columbus's voyages lead to the discovery, and you'll see I put that in quotation marks because the people that lived in the American continents knew they were there. So it was a discovery for Europeans and for Afro-Eurasians, I guess. It leads to the development of large colonial empires in that part of the world. First the Spanish, Portuguese in Brazil, but later the Americans and the French in North America. And probably the most significant things to come out of this are the Great Dying, basically the population collapse of the Native Americans, which we'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute, and the Columbian Exchange, which we'll handle in topic 4.3. Okay. So, maritime empires. We're going to talk a lot about these. Who were they? Where were they? They're empires based on sea power and trade. And these are not geographically connected to the mother country. Mother country might be in a totally other part of the globe, as we're going to see with the examples down below. The Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, and the Dutch. All of them develop far-flung, sea-based empires. Okay. Going back to Portugal, Prince Henry the Navigator is the guy who gets the ball rolling with the Portuguese. He is the son of the King of Portugal, and he's basically put in charge of these efforts. He is not actually a navigator or a sailor himself, but he develops the school of navigation and sailing, and it really leads this process, and he is really responsible for the development of the Portuguese exploration and maritime trade, and later the Portuguese Empire, though he dies before any of that comes to fruition. Some knowledge and technology, since that's what we're supposed to be hitting on. The knowledge of gravity portrays a lot of this, and it really helped a lot with other things, especially the development of the astronomical chart. The idea had been around for quite a while. If you can remember from ninth grade, a genius of India named Aryabhata, who really was brilliant. He got the first work on this. Galileo did some work on gravity, and eventually Isaac Newton names it and develops the whole theory of gravity. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Astronomical charts. Really, these develop as a way to become essential for navigation, and you have the two different versions, the one that's Earth-centered and the later one that's heliocentrism. The stern post rudder, this is one that goes on the back end of the boat. It was originally developed by the Han Chinese. The Arabs used it. It later diffuses to Europe, and it really allows you to have much greater control of your ship. The astrolabe is for steering and by the stars or by celestial bodies. And it was really to help to determine latitude, help you to triangulate your position, see if you could figure out where you were. Using trigonometry, those of you who are getting into some trig with Mr. Malfi. The compass is a navigational instrument. I think everybody pretty much knows what that is. With the north, south, east, west, it shows you the relative directions. It's been kind of superseded in today's world by the GPS. And then you have the lateen sail, which is aka also known as the Latin rig. Triangular sail, first used by the Romans. It was attached to a yard, which is simply just a long piece of wood extended off of the mast of the ship, and it ran on a kind of an angle running back to the mast, and it allowed for sailing against the wind. We've talked about that a few other times already. Okay, the three different ships that are the early workhorses of this are the Carrack, which is a Portuguese ship. It was more of a trading vessel, so it was a little larger. The Caravel, also a Portuguese development. This was more the exploring ship. It was a little smaller. It was rugged. It could handle the rigors of all the Atlantic trade. Could also sail. It was what they call a shallow draft, so it could sail in rivers, things like that. So it made it an ideal vessel for exploration. And then a later development is the Flight, which is a Dutch sailing vessel, and this one was really designed specifically for trade. You'll see it looks a lot like the Carrack, but it's bigger. And and it was not rigged for combat. It carried twice the cargo of the earlier versions, but with a much smaller crew. So it was definitely a vessel for trade. So the results of all this: you have the development of worldwide trade, you have war, you have colonial empires, and you have slavery. Okay, so that brings us to the end of topic 1. We'll get into topic 2 on the next video.